Hi and welcome to the video. In the previous video we looked at how Active Directory uses groups to not only control or to make administration easier for the multiple user accounts that we have. We also looked at the type of groups that we can create and where we would apply those groups within the hierarchy of the domain or the forests. In this video, we're going to actually create the groups within Active Directory, and then we're going to assign the users to those groups. Jumping straight in, we're going to go to our Active Directory users and computers, and we're going to expand our top level domain. From here, we're going to create a new organizational unit similar to our others, and this is going to be our groups organizational unit. So we're going to right click on the top level of the domain, we're going to go to new and then organizational unit. Much like the previous naming conventions, we're going to call this MSP Tech, and then we're going to call this groups. We're going to ensure that the protected container from accidental deletion is ticked. We're going to go ahead and click OK. Once this OU has been created, we're going to create a sub OU. And this is going to be for the actual department groups that we're going to create. So we're going to call this departments. Going to go ahead and click OK there. And then we're just going to refresh the top level, and that will reorganize that alphabetically or according to AD structure. So now we have the MSP Tech groups and the departments OU. With that highlighted, we're going to go ahead and create our first group with the symbol at the top here where it says create a new group in the current container, and when we click on that we're going to get a pop-up dialog box, and this is a new object group, and it specifies the create in is this case ad.msptech.co.uk, MSP Tech groups departments. As we discussed in the previous video, there are different types of groups, so it's good practice again to make sure that the naming convention we use, we can distinguish between the two easily, although it is displayed within AD as well. For the first group, we're going to create a global group, and it's going to be a security group, and this will be our first department group, which is going to be the directors. So we're going to go ahead and call this GG for global group dash, and then we're going to call this directors. That's populated in the group name. The pre-Windows 2000 group name will also populate as well. And then we have the group scope and the group type. As we said, this is a global group that we're going to create, and it's a security type. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. Once that's done, we can see that group is now selected. We can also see under type that it actually specifies its security group global. However, just for reference, the GG dash just makes it easier when we're searching for these types of groups. Once we've created the first group, we're now going to need to assign the users to it. And there's a couple of ways we can do this. The first way is we can double click on the group itself, and this will give us the GG dash directors properties dialog box, and from here we can select members and we can add the members in individually, and for the directors we'll do that as there are only two. So we're going to go ahead and click add, and we're going to get the select users, contacts, computers, service accounts or groups, and we're going to enter the object name. In this case we're going to type in the first director, which is Osborne. And once we've got the starting part of the name, we can click on check names, and it will find the nearest match, or if there's multiple matches it will ask us to select the correct one. Once Osborne is selected, we're going to select the next director for this group, and that will be Katrina. And once again we'll click check names, and it will find the AD object or AD user and populate that for us. Once we've entered all of the users or the objects that we're adding, we can go ahead and click OK. And we'll see now underneath members, we now have our two users listed. We can also see the Active Directory Domain Services folder. It's actually specifying the location of where that is. And if we expand this across, We can see that one's in New Zealand, Belfast, and one's in GB, London. Once the users are all in there though, we can go ahead and click apply to apply those, or we can click OK to save and close that down. That's the directors group created with the members now added. The next one on the list we're going to create is the human resources group. So we're going to follow the exact same principle. We're going to go ahead and select new group, and we're going to enter in the details. In this case, this will be GG dash, and then it's human resources. You will notice that I haven't used a space within human resources. You don't need to worry about having a space or not having a space. However, just for saving characters in case we get extremely long lengths of group names or names in general, I typically avoid spaces and use a dash when we need to separate parts of the naming convention. This is preference, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong. Just over the years, I've removed the space from unnecessarily being there. Plus with pre-2000 names, it's always nice to have it matching accordingly. Again though, we're going to select that it's a global scope group and that it's a security group type, and we're going to go ahead and click OK. We now have our human resources group created, and we're going to add the users in for that. In this particular instance, we're going to double click, we're going to go to members, and we're going to add the only user for human resources, which is Julie. That's going to populate, we're going to go OK. We're just going to apply this, and then we're going to close that off with OK. The next group we have is finance, and for finance there's actually 3 users listed that we have listed. So we're going to go ahead and create the group. This time, as an alternative, we're going to right click in the white space, we're going to select new, just go all the way down, and we can select group just here. Same pop-up dialog box comes through, it's just an alternative way of getting to it, and in this case it's going to be GG-finance. Once again, this is the global group scope, and it's going to be security group type, and we're going to click OK. As mentioned previously, there is an alternative way we can add these users, and that's we can select the user individually and then add them to the group. We're going to do this now as an example. So what we would do in this situation is we would browse to our users, and we'd find the relevant user. So we're going to select London in the first instance, and the 2 users we have listed are Mervyn and Lance. Now we can select on Mervyn as the first option here, double click on this, and we can see that when his properties dialog box pops up, there is a member of tab. If we click on member of, what we will see is that he is currently a member of the domain users group only. What we can now do is click on add, and in this case we're going to select an object, and it's either a group or built-in security principles. Once again, we're just going to go ahead and type the name of the group this time that we wish to add this user into. In this case, this will be GG-finance. And we're going to click on check names. When we do that, you'll see it just suddenly goes underlined, and it's found the group for it. We're going to click on OK. We can now see that this user is now a member of the GG-finance group, and we can apply this for the changes to take effect. We can click OK also to close that off. The next user we have in the London location is Lance. So we're going to go ahead and find Lance just here, and we're going to follow the same process. Double click the user, select the member of tab. From the member of, we're going to click on add. Once again, we're going to type in the name, GG-finance. We're going to select check names just to make sure we find it. As you can see, that's finished off that GG-finance group. We're going to go ahead and click OK. Once again, it's added the group in for this user to be a member of, and we're going to go ahead and click apply, and then close that off with OK. We have one more finance user, and that's Franklin, and they're located in the Manchester office. So we can go to the next OU, Man-Manchester, we can find Franklin, double click on the user, once again member of, click on the add, and we can type in the name for the group. GG-finance. Check names. Yep, that's correct. Click OK. Click apply, and then close that off with OK. This way can be a little bit longer, but if we're only adding one user to a group and we can find the user or are already on the user properties, this can be quite an easy way of doing it. Alternatively, as we've done in the initial beginning, we can go back to our MSP Tech groups and then our departments, and we can add multiple users as we did initially, and this can be a bit quicker if we're creating groups from the beginning or from scratch. I'm going to go ahead now and just create the IT group, so we're going to right click, new and group. I'm going to get the new object group properties box pop up. We're going to call this GG-IT. Again, we're keeping this as a global and a security group. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And now just to add the members, we're going to double click on the object, select members, click add, and this time we're going to add Eli. We're also going to add Solomon. We're going to go ahead and click OK. We're going to apply those changes to make sure they take effect and close that off with OK. This is the starting point for our groups. We actually have two more groups left to create, which are sales and engineers, or engineering, and we're going to go ahead and create them now, and we'll come back once they're created. And we've now created all of our Active Directory groups. So we have one for each of the areas we need: directors, engineering, finance, human resources, IT, and sales. These are the groups that we've assigned our users to, and using the best practice method, we've created those using global security groups. The next group type that we're going to create is a domain local, and this is going to be used to apply the permissions to a device. Now, once again, we're going to segregate this out on our organizational users, layout for the OUs. So we're going to select MSP Tech groups. We're going to go ahead and create a new organizational unit. We're going to select organizational unit, and then we're going to call this one permissions. Okay, then go ahead and click OK. And we're going to add an additional OU here just for the growth of the network. So we're going to go ahead and select permissions, right click new, another organizational unit, and we're going to call this endpoint or endpoints. Within this organizational unit, we're going to create the endpoint device permissions. And as mentioned earlier, this is going to be a domain local type group. So we're going to go ahead and create a new group. Once again, we're going to get the new object group type. We're going to be asked for a group name. Now in this instance, we know it's going to be a domain local group, as this is the group that we're going to assign to the permission, or assign the permissions to. So we're going to select domain local. We're going to ensure security is still selected. And in the group name, we're going to call this a DLG, domain local group, dash endpoint administrators. Once we've selected that and entered our details, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And now we have our DLG endpoint administrators group created. We can also see the type here is security group domain local. From here, we're now going to add in the actual group that's going to be having permission to this. So we're going to go ahead and double click. We're going to go to members, and this time we're going to add the IT department as the nested group of here. So it's going to be GG-IT. Check names. There we go. And we're going to click on OK. And we're going to see that now has the group in there. We're going to go ahead and click apply and then OK. This has now set the DLG endpoint administrators group, and it now has the departmental IT department group within that. When we apply this group to a permission, anyone within this group or any groups within this group will then have the required permissions. Another additional part that we can also do is if we double click this, we can see that all the groups have a description, and we can use the description or even the notes field at the bottom here to be able to assign any additional details that we may need to be aware of. In this case, we're going to put here that users-members of this group will have endpoint administrator access to endpoint devices. When we go ahead and click apply, click OK, what we'll see is the description is also populated at the top here. And this is good when we need either a description of what the group's doing, or we need to have a rough idea so that when people are administering the network, other users or other members of the team, they can also see what that group was created for. As the network expands out, these group names may have to take on some unusual names, so it's always a good idea to put some details there as to what they do. Now that we have the DLG-administrators group created, we're going to go ahead and assign this group the permissions to the local machine. To demonstrate the existing setup, we're going to jump onto our first endpoint device that we created, and we're going to go ahead and log in as one of our normal users, in this case Osborne. Once the device is logged in, we have already pre-downloaded the Adobe Reader installation file. And if we go ahead and try and run this, what we'll find is, because we are not an administrator of this machine, the user account control will come up and tell us that we need to enter an admin's username and/or password, which obviously, as a standard user, they don't have. We're going to go ahead and click no on this for the time being. Now, to assign the permission, we will need to be a member of the administrators group for this machine. And currently, the only administrator we have is the original administrator account. So we're going to go ahead and log out from this user, and we're going to log in with our domain administrator account. Once the administrator account's logged in, we're now going to assign the group that we've just created, the DLG-endpoint administrators group, the permissions to be an administrator over this device. To do that, we're going to right click on our start menu, and we're going to go up to computer management. From the computer management local window, we're going to see that system tools is there, and just a couple beneath that is local users and groups. It's worth pointing out at this point that there are still local users on this account, on this PC or this endpoint device. And we can see from the original video when we created this machine, there is still the local user account. So we could in theory use that. The main point to take away from this is, although we are talking about AD groups, in this particular instance, there are still local users available to the local endpoint devices. However, we will cover this in a later video and how we manage these accordingly. For this example, we're going to be looking at the groups, and we're going to be selecting the administrators group here. When we double click on this, what we'll see is that the ad.msptech.co.uk domain has the domain admins group pre-existing here. And this is pre-populated when we join the machine to the domain, so that administrators automatically have full access to the device. For our example, we're going to go ahead and click add, and we'll see that we get a new properties dialog box, pop up, and we can see that we are selecting an object type, in this case users, service accounts or groups, and the location is ad.msptech.co.uk. In this window, we're now going to select the DLG-endpoint administrators group that we've created. We're going to go ahead and click on check names. That's going to populate in for us, and we're going to go ahead and click OK. As we can see on the screen now, we now have the DLG endpoint administrators group listed within the administrators group of the machine, and we can go ahead and click apply and OK. Next, we're going to log in as one of the members of the IT team, and we're going to demonstrate that we can now install that software as they will be a local administrator. So we're going to go ahead and sign out of this account. And once we're signed out, we're going to sign in with one of our IT team. So in this case, we're going to log in under other user. We're going to select Eli as the first example. There we go. This will now create our user's profile for logging in, and once we have logged in, we can validate that we are now an administrator by trying to either check the groups that are on there, we can install the software, or we can run a GP result to check that it's seeing the groups that we're a member of also. We'll cover these in other videos later, but for now we're just going to try and install the Adobe software. This is pre-downloaded, and we've put this into our local disk just here. We're going to go ahead and click install. At this point, the user account control is just prompting us as to whether we wish to allow the application to make changes. We can go ahead and click yes. As you'll see, the installation will now happen as this user is a member of the domain, the Endpoint Device Administrators group. Whilst the Adobe Reader is installing for this example, we can also check that we are a member of the group by running some PowerShell or command prompt scripts. In this example, we're going to right click on the Start menu, we're going to go to Windows PowerShell, and we're going to use the following command. And that will be gp result /r. We'll cover this more when we cover group policy, but for now we'll run the command. And what we should see is the following. And near the bottom we'll find that the user is part of the following security groups, and we can see that DLG Endpoint Administrators is listed. And this is another way to validate that we are actually a member of the correct group. For now though, we're going to close this off as it's now validated, and we've actually installed the software. Just going to untick that and click finish. And we can see that the Adobe Acrobat DC has now installed. Close off that. Obviously, as we've just discussed, we've added the group to the machine locally. However, as we scale out the network, we don't want to have to log in as an administrator, local administrator, or a domain administrator every time we wish to add these groups to devices. So the better way of doing this would be via group policy, and we're going to look at that part in another video. However, for now, what we've looked at in this video is creating the groups for our users. In this case, we've created departmental groups for each of the users, and we've created an endpoint permission for endpoint administrators. We've assigned the IT group into the administrator group here, and then we've assigned this to our endpoint device, which means any of our IT staff, or additionally anyone else we add into this group here moving forward, will automatically have administrator rights. This completes this video for now, and in the next videos we'll carry on into the group policy objects and how we can use groups to assign more permissions and groups out automatically.